We recently looked at the numbers for World of Warcraft, and we saw that the Mythic Plus numbers are down quite a lot from Dragonflight, and part of that is because the season is just complete shit compared to what was one of the best seasons I've ever played through, which was Dragonflight Season 3, and even Season 4 was really good. That surely has something to do with it. But I think the other part of it is WoW has become more of a solo game because of Delves. Delves up to a +8 will take you to what is basically a 6 key on Mythic Plus. So I think a lot of people have decided, well, I'm not going to do any Mythic Plus because I'm not enjoying it. I'm just going to stick to Delves. Whereas in other seasons, whether you were enjoying it or not, you would have had to do Mythic Plus to get real gear. So interestingly, Marcellian dropped a video here. Has WoW become a better solo game? Interesting. Let's check this video out from Marcellian.
Alright, we're back, and today the discussion revolves around solo players and the solo gameplay experience of WoW. Has it become
And by the way, do you want it to be a solo game? Is that a good thing? I'm not sure.
better in the War Within? Will it improve? There are, without a doubt, people who enjoy the game without the stress of humans on their mind. So let's see if the changes to it made it possible and better than in the past. Has WoW become a better game as a solo player? Should you play WoW solo? First of all, before we get into that, can you play WoW solo? Is a much better question. It's safe to assume that over the years, WoW has become consistently more solo player friendly.
Yeah.
We as a community have criticized the lack of social elements for a long time, but from where I am standing, we aren't really socializing that much.
Yeah, just standing in the city and queue. It's kind of true. I mean, as social as we want the game to be, it just with the automatic queues and everything like that, it's just not as social as it used to be. Now, I'll be honest, part of the reason why I started streaming like 3.5 years ago was because I missed that social aspect, the community aspect of the game. And I feel like Twitch has somewhat like harbored that. Like it's a place where the WoW community still comes together and talks while they're playing the game, whether you're playing together or not. Like just people are chatting constantly, and that's what WoW used to be, in trade chat and everything else before all this stuff happened. And like in terms of the War Within, it is the most soloable game that the game has ever been. Most definitely. I mean, with all the stuff you can do by yourself to get good gear and actually be geared to basically what a +6 key is going to give you, yeah, it's become a very soloable game. And who knows what player housing is going to do on that side of things, too. Oh, shit. I mean, I hope they implement player housing in the right way. And if they do, I don't think it'll wreck things. I hope they put the houses in cities and stuff so that way it keeps things, keeps people in the hubs, keeps the population feeling big. Because if they just put houses in the middle of Elwynn Forest, well, completely like portal out from Elwynn Forest, it's going to be a problem. You're going to see the same thing we saw with garrisons.
Either, and I'll tell you more about that and what I mean later in the video. The social aspect has been cross-referenced with old school WoW for quite a while, where the comparison has always put Classic ahead of the live retail game. But they are two very different games entirely, and the gaming world has evolved since 2004. In terms of actual solo content, there are quite a few things people can do, and it all starts with leveling a character. Not only is the entire leveling process fully doable as a solo player, you can choose any of the past expansions to do it in, giving you quite a bit to do and explore. Once that is done and you reach level 60, you basically start the War Within or the respective expansion at the time.
And like some people will say, well, leveling's always been a solo thing. If you've been playing since the very beginning, like when I started playing, there were quests, if you remember. Sometimes they would lock up, like you wouldn't be able to do the next quest until you did that go hunt down this knoll or whatever, go hunt down this person. You need 5 people to do it kind of thing. Like those quests did exist, and a lot of times they were barriers that you had to get through to continue questing. So no, it was not a completely solo experience to level up like it is now. Now it's much more like, yeah, you just get in and do it. And also you had to group up. Like a lot of times you would get quests, like I still remember leveling up, you'd get to Westfall, you get the quest to go into Dead Mines. Obviously, you got to queue up for that. You got to not queue up, you got to make a group. You got to make a group, go get the, what's his name? Van Cleef's head, right? That was the quest. And those things had to happen. Like you could not continue the storyline unless you did those forced groupable quests. And that just doesn't exist anymore.
The story campaign is 100% soloable now. And I know I said you could solo level your way to 60, but with the past expansions you couldn't really complete the story in a solo way, since the story would always culminate within the raid of that expansion. And as you might guess, you would need people for that.
Yeah, you don't even need that anymore.
With the War Within, you can now do the story dungeons with followers, which are essentially scripted AI that are coded in a way to absolutely annihilate all content with just the basic spells available. Since they are not real players that interact with you in any meaningful way, it would be kind of like fake solo content, since you're not actually alone, but real solo content in a sense that you don't need other people to play the game. Similarly, the raid has a story mode option that lets you fight.
I mean, story mode's a completely new thing. First time it's ever been introduced to the game, and yeah, it totally creates soloable raid content. You're literally going in just to experience the story, and that was something previously that you couldn't do. WoW AI is still better than Samiccus tank. Fuck you, Boishi. Just the idea this would have caused massive chaos 10 years ago. No doubt, no doubt. And I wonder, like, is it a good thing? Like, are people just becoming such degenerates that they can't even interact with other people anymore? That might be the case. I do remember, like, my mom would yell at me. I'd be playing WoW so much. And she'd be like, you should get out and, like, you know, go out with your friends, talk to people. And my response would always be like, Mom, I am talking to people. These are all real people. This group of 5 people, they're all real. We're talking right now. And that was always like my excuse to kind of shun her off. I'm like, I'm not playing no solo game. You have to play with people. Nowadays, I wouldn't be able to say that anymore because you literally could play this game solo.
For the purpose of finishing the story in Ashkahet and the 11.0 patch entirely. And once you are here, you have officially finished the campaign and are left with just the endgame. Endgame for MMOs are most of the time group content, like raids and dungeons. But since your goal is to play solo, we will assume you won't be interested in those. And even if you are,
we have a realm to destroy.
Necro, thank you for the follow. Welcome to our Scourge.
Follower dungeons are still a thing, while story mode raid isn't really going anywhere. Sure, they give lower rewards, but also require close to no effort to complete. What the War Within did better than any past expansion outside open world content is introducing the delves. Now, delves are a new feature that pits you alone against a challenge that is similar to a dungeon or even a raid, albeit at a much smaller scale, since, you know, you're alone. Well, with Bran, but he is an NPC and sometimes makes you wish you had real players with you instead. However much people dismiss...
Another thing that made it even more soloable, now Bran is going to be able to tank. He's going to be able to tank in the next patch. So even bigger is like, okay, maybe sometimes even delves got to a point where you needed somebody. Not anymore. If you're a healer and you have not been able to like push delves to the max, you'll be able to in the next one because Bran's going to tank. So there you go.
Delves as an end game content, they have succeeded at offering people that cannot engage with social groups something to do. It's part of the end game now, with increasing difficulty and rewards that reward your continuous progression on your class and in the game as a whole. And that doesn't mean they are without issues, but that would be true for pretty much anything ever made in a video game ever. Through delves, by the use of bountiful delves and maps, you can acquire hero track gear, which is equivalent to heroic rating and mythic plus all the way to +9, so quite a bit, if not the majority of the endgame rewards are packed in a system that you can do on your own time, at your own pace, stop and pause whenever you like, add more people if you feel like it, and generally finish it in anywhere between 10 minutes and forever. There's literally no pressure or constraint on performance outside making sure you just don't die too much, which is hardly a barrier in an RPG. From all of these points of view, the solo aspect of WoW has indeed improved and made the game
another death knight.
Mikey, thank you for the follow. Welcome to our Scourge.
Good morning, Sam, you rat.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Death Knight of our Scourge, 11 months. 1 month away from a year. Look, the game being soloable, as he's saying right here, it's not necessarily like the worst thing ever. I do appreciate that there are solo aspects to the game that I can get into. You know, I got 4 kids now, I'm married. I'm not the same Samiccus that I was when I was 16. So I do appreciate like that. If I have 15 minutes or 20, I can get on here and do something really quick by myself. Because forming a group does take time. It does. But I still appreciate WoW for what it is, and it should be a social game. That's why I love it.
Way better for people who just want to take it slow, tackle the content at a relaxing pace, experience the story, theme, and world of a patch without feeling the drive, requirement, or even pressure to play with other people. But there are more ways to play the game in a solo way, if we assume that solo means not having pre-made groups such as guilds or the legendary elusive friends. And that is, of course, engaging the game as a pug player to attempt to clear actual raid difficulties all the way to and even including...
I mean, it's funny he's saying this is literally what the entirety of my stream is built on. I mean, pugging content is like 99% of what we do here. And the truth is that wasn't possible. Back in the day, raiding was, was much harder to get done in a pug. People were less skilled, first of all, too. That's really the thing, because the raiding content wasn't harder. It was just people were harder to get together and get things done properly. We pugged freaking some of the hardest raids in the game ever. I still say Sanctum of Domination was a complete freaking shit show. That was a hard-ass raid. That was one of the hardest raids. Also, Sepulchre of the First Ones. But that Anduin fight, shit. One of the hardest raids ever put in the game. So we pug that stuff. Yes, it has become a puggable world, and a lot of people, that's what they do, is, you just get on and you raid when you can. There's no way to fit the raid into your schedule otherwise.
Mythic, as well as pushing keys. Being a pug is a totally different experience when playing World of Warcraft, and it is an experience some people are more comfortable with playing. Marcelin and I, and other players like us, wouldn't choose to be a part of the pug world, but that doesn't mean we don't experience it or be on the receiving end of its shortcomings. Over the years, we have pugged many a key and raids trying to achieve a particular score or loot a certain item or legendary. The game being better as a pug player is unfortunately directly correlated with the perceived meta and balance of classes and content. What this means is that when you engage with the game as a pug player, you are either the one making a group and getting people in, or the one trying to get in. By the nature of group making, there are more people trying to get into groups than actually making groups. And because of that, you are at the mercy of the person inviting them.
Well, and then there's the whole thing. If you're a DPS, you're a small fish in a big pond, man. There's a ton of people queuing up. Whereas if you're a healer or a tank, okay, you've kind of differentiated yourself. The only issue is with the queuing up for stuff and everything else, your IO and everything, like all these ranking systems that didn't used to exist in the game back when you could form up a group. Like literally eye level was like introduced basically in Wrath of the Lich King. That was when people started downloading that add-on and checking checking eye level. But before that, there was no way to really rank out a person. Like if somebody whispered you, they're like, "Oh, you need a tank, I'll tank." There was no way to really determine if they were a good tank or not. I mean, maybe you could go on WoW Armory and check what they've done in Raid before, but mostly you just kind of took them. You're like, all right, yeah, we got a tank. Let's get this guy. And then you didn't find out if he sucked or not until the couple pulls in.
Convincing somebody to invite you will be a process that is
mostly
accomplished by the class and spec you are playing. This is where the perceived meta comes in, together with the class balance, since they go hand in hand to an extent. If you are playing a spec deemed bad, you will have a harder time getting into groups. If you are playing a class or spec in a particularly difficult content, you being a meta player might not even matter as much, since people might look at other markers of competence like item level, mythic plus score, or raid bosses killed. You could be a feral druid trying to get into a group and get declined, since feral is usually a very undervalued spec. But if you are a feral druid with ridiculously high item level, a mythic plus score way above the dungeon you are applying to, or many mythic bosses killed over qualifying you for a heroic raid, you will likely get in quicker than the enhancement shaman 20 levels lower than you with 500 less score, and you get the picture.
Yeah, there's just so many ways now to judge a person. Like, there used to even be conversations, like, link your achievement, this and that. Have you done this fight before? Do you know this mechanic? Like, you used to whisper back and forth with people before you would invite them. Now it's like, literally, check their IO, check their item level, check their, you can see literally, the add-ons literally show you how many bosses they've killed, stuff like that. So it's just a lot more anti-social, even when you're being social. Because literally, you don't even got to talk to the person. You could figure out their blood type with some fucking add-on at this point.
I understand there are too many specific situations where what I said might not be applicable, but the concept remains. Overall, at least since Battle for Azeroth, that is 3 expansions ago, class balance and content design has become way more accessible to the entire pool of specs and classes of the game. People are often lost in the sauce when it comes to their own personal biases at play, but I can tell you for sure there was a time when Affliction and Subtlety rogues were more than 5 to 6 key levels behind the meta, not even able to clear plus 15s in the old dungeon system, or barely killing mythic bosses, or even getting KSM or things like that, while now they would be considered unplayable by the more try-hard community if there are 2 key levels behind. Not to mention that the increasing cadence of balance tuning for specs and classes has made it sure that everybody will have time to shine. Exhibit A is right in front of you. As a fire mage, I started and stayed as one, if not the worst raid spec for over 2 months, one of, if not the worst dungeon DPS specs with damage profiles that competed with tanks, and now we are buffed enough where I can duke it out with enhancement shamans. Similarly, Prot Paladin was the least performing tank together with Brewmaster, where you could fall flat on your face on the first dungeon.
That changed.
Pack. Now they are pushing keys above what every other tank can do. These are just a few examples, and yes, unfortunately, not every spec is enjoying pendulum swings in performance, but it is clear that...
I mean, it's not just pendulum swings in performance. I mean, the entirety of tanking has become a shit show since the nerfs to tanks in general. It's changed the game a lot. It's changed Mythic Plus a lot. It's changed rating a lot. It's just a bad change. I don't know why they did it. I don't know, like, who asked for limp dick noodle tanks? I don't know. Somebody gets turned on by it, but certainly not me. I want big dick tanks. I want to make tanks great again. I don't know what that would be. Matka? Make tanks great again? Yeah, please.
That once a spec is bad for long enough,
not fun now.
They will get buffed to be able to compete, if not at least clear endgame content reliably. What remains to be discussed is the content design in terms of accessibility. This season is one of the hardest seasons we have ever had in WoW, of late anyway. Mythic Plus in particular has taken a big leap in difficulty, getting a lot of players for being able to play, which in turn promotes pre-made style groups that can offset the difficulty with communication and social relationships that might get a friend playing a feral into a group, whereas that feral would get no invites for any endgame content period. This alone would make the game much worse for a solo player and has done so already. I can sit here and tell you it will 100% get better, but for a sane player that might not matter since the time is now and not tomorrow. So in the end, is it worth it? I mentioned at the start that the social aspect isn't really engaged upon even by people who complained it was lost and needed to be brought back.
That's true.
People like Marcellian and I. As much as we like socializing with the players we are doing dungeons and raids with, we don't really do it. All of the socializing happens outside of the game in our Discord calls. In the end, I guess that is all socializing, just a different kind than the one that we would think would be inside of the game. I believe there are two types of solo players that can enjoy the game. One would be the player that is just not interested in playing WoW as an MMORPG, but rather just as an RPG.
Yeah.
This player would like to do quests, level reputations, do a delve, maybe see the raid.
I mean, and realistically, that's what RP servers are for. I mean, I know there's actually probably more social aspects on RP servers than there are in non-RP servers. But I would say, I mean, I guess if you wanted to play the game as just an RPG, you'd probably be best off just heading to an RP server and playing solo over there.
Call it a day. This could be your average dad or mom with a lot of stuff on their plate and no real time to dedicate to a guild for raiding or a group to push keys with.
Kick her off the freaking computer. What's she doing? What's she playing? Freaking, what is this? StarCraft? No, what the hell? What is she playing? EVE Online? What is this shit? Tell her get the hell off. You got to play some WoW. This is what raiding looks like today. This is modern day raider right here. You got like your, I don't know, I would put her in her 40s, 40-something-year-old mother. She got to kick the daughter off the PC to get into the raid. Yes, exactly. Yeah, I know what's... No, not from experience from Moonguard. No, I do not have any characters on that server that I know of.
Push keys with. It
could like, I got a raid, get the hell up.
That is just uncomfortable socializing and would prefer to keep to themselves when it comes to video games. But there's just this itch, this WoW itch they cannot scratch, so they play the solo aspect of it without interacting with the endgame raiding and Mythic Plus or even PvP. For these types of players, the game has become way better to play in a solo fashion with everything we mentioned so far. The other player would be the one interested in endgame but either no desire to make friends, find guilds, or a lack of ability to do those things. That player prefers to just use the looking for group tool and become a part of the pug world. The game has been made easier to solo as a pug as well, with the multitudes of gear sources you can chase that do not require pre-made groups. Those are also a factor here, but professions as well.
It's funny how crazy the pug world has become. There are literally a lot of verified streamers here, partnered streamers on Twitch, that's all they do is like run mythic keys. That's all they freaking do constantly. I mean, we raid people. Rob X does it. We raid a lot of people. That's all they do. is just do mythic keys all day. They're just a pug place where people come and pug keys together. And that's literally what it like. That's how big the pug world has become. That you can literally become a partnered Twitch streamer just running keys for people. It's freaking hilarious. And then me over here, I'm doing raids all the time, and I just enjoy raiding. That's why I do it on here. But it's easier to form a group when I got freaking 100 people in here all want to join the raid. That's fun. So it's funny how like the pug community has become its own community.
This player, it might suck to play at this moment. The game is difficult, which creates barriers of entry when it comes to getting into groups. Barriers like off-meta specs barely getting invites. Barriers like mechanics and encounters that require voice communication to defeat. We believe the game is much more enjoyable with a group of people you can consistently play with. They can be friends, guildies, or just Battle.net buddies you make along the way. It is not required, but definitely more enjoyable. Indeed, WoW still has a bunch of things that need to be addressed to have these barriers removed for solo players so they can enjoy a better game. One such barrier was discussed by Marcelin and I in this video right here, and it revolves around gearing. The good news is that these issues are already on the table to be fixed, so the obstacles stopping people from enjoying the solo experience are on their way out one at a time.
Yeah, that's good. It's a good video, and look, it is like it's inevitably 100% true that it is a more soloable game today than it's ever been, no doubt. But is that a good thing for the game? I think there's a good balance. You got to have a good balance. You got to have solo content that a solo person, you know, some dad or like I said before, you know, Steve from accounting has got to get in here for a little bit. He's got to play a little bit, so he's going to get in and do some solo content. But for me, the core content of the game, the majority of the content in an MMO should always be, you know, massive and multiplayer. That's what I like most about WoW. Nice video. I only play for 3-ish hours a day, so keys is what fits my schedule. I feel like that's a big thing that goes with key running scene. It's true, yeah. I mean, time is a thing, right? And people who have less time than you are going to do delves. People who have a little bit more time are going to do raids. Now me, I only really play 3 to 4 hours a day, right? But I find the time to raid because I'm the one putting together the raid. If I wasn't doing that, if I wasn't on stream putting together a raid where 90% of the raid's coming from my Twitch chat, it would be much harder to get anything done within that time span. The only reason why I can raid in such a short time is because I've got the ability to pull from you guys and form up a raid really quickly. Grandpas like me need solo content. Yeah, and I don't think solo content in the game is a bad thing. I just don't want the entire game to become solo content.